as first responders and federal aviation investigators in D.C. continue the somber work of victim and evidence recovery. The FAA is taking one of its strongest actions yet to reduce the risk of mid-air collisions in the congested and complicated airspace around Reagan National Airport.
Helicopter traffic now restricted in the immediate vicinity of Reagan National. The NTSB has retrieved both black boxes from the jet, and emergency response crews have recovered at least 41 bodies from the Potomac.
We have team coverage here. Alice Gainer has more on the victims. Let's begin with investigative reporter Tim McNicholas, once again live from Reagan National Airport for us. Tim, what is the latest information you've learned?
Christine and Dick, divers have been working with the National Transportation Safety Board, or the NTSB, throughout the day to try to recover parts of this plane. And if you take a look past the airport here, you can see a number of boats on the water, including a large U.S. Coast Guard ship that arrived today, and the flashing blue and red lights you see out there, those are other boats that are a part of the recovery efforts, including this one to the left of the Coast Guard ship, which throughout the day has been stationed next to some of the wreckage.
Another day of challenging weather conditions might slow recovery efforts down, according to D.C. Fire and EMS Chief John Donnelly. But he says they are prepared for the wind and rain as they continue to search for more than 20 bodies.
We expect to recover all of the bodies. We have that's why our teams are still working. We're going to have to work with the salvage company to do some of that work.
Donnelly says the recovery teams have identified 28 of the 41 bodies already recovered. He also said crews will begin removing the fuselage, or main body, of the plane no later than Saturday afternoon. A source with knowledge of the investigation says that will likely require a special crane, which may need to be brought to D.C.
I believe that when we remove the aircraft, that will help us resolve this number. If it doesn't, we will continue the search.
The National Transportation Safety Board recovered the plane's flight data recorders, also known as black boxes, which may contain a record of crucial details as they investigate what happened.
Give us a lot of data points. They can tell us about communications that we may not know about.
CBS News has learned the same air traffic control worker managing helicopter traffic was also handling some planes, taking off and landing around the time the collision happened. Sources say those tasks are usually handled by two different people at that time of day.
They are well qualified and they are able to multitask. By that I mean you could be handling, even singular controllers are handling multiple flights at any busy airport.
At the time of the crash, both aircraft were flying at about 400 feet. Military helicopters are supposed to stay below 200 feet. And the NTSB is scheduled to give an update on their investigation in about a half hour. We will be sure to bring you any new information as soon as we get it. Christine and Dick.
Absolutely, Tim. Thank you.
All right, Tim, thanks. It doesn't seem real. That's what some of the families of victims are saying as they deal with the unspeakable tragedy.
Alice Gainer joins us now as so many more families are looking for closure tonight, Alice.
Just another painful day for these families. Dick and Christine, let's go over those numbers again. The fire chief in Washington, D.C. says the remains of 41 people have been recovered, 28 have officially been identified, and 18 families have been notified. Families and friends of the victims have been sharing more about their loved ones. Several have ties to our area.
28-year-old Melissa Jane Nicandri, who was living in New York City, was a passenger on board the American Airlines plane. Her devastated family released a statement that reads in part, quote, "She was everything that anyone could hope for with a daughter. Beautiful, smart, funny, kind, and generous. Her future was so bright. Melissa had an adventurous spirit and will be missed forever." Denasia Brown Elder was born and spent much of her youth in Coney Island before moving to North Carolina. The married mother of two was a flight attendant on board the American Airlines flight. Another flight attendant, 53-year-old father, Ian Epstein, has been identified by loved ones.
Ian was just a ball of vibrant, colorful energy.
Tim Lilly is the father of pilot and first officer of the American Airlines flight, Sam Lilly.
What goes through my mind is I can just see him. I'm not sure if he was pilot flying or he was the pilot not flying on that leg. We trade off. But if he was a pilot flying, he didn't give up.
Gary O'Hara is the father of Black Hawk crew chief Ryan O'Hara.
How can this be real? You know, we were laughing and texting to each other, talking about when he would move here and we'd be, living together as a family. And, especially to basically witness your son's death in the news, it's devastating.
He describes how he received confirmation of his son's death.
Seeing 2 Army officers at my front door, it's heartbreaking.
Our hearts go out to everyone. And as Tim mentioned, search teams will continue to work the site. The fire chief also mentioned they have peer support for first responders to help them get through this. Christine and Dick.
Yeah, that's so important, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
More backlash, meantime, today following comments from the president.
Just yesterday, the president claimed the FAA's diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring practices may have placed a role in the mid-air collision. Allen Devlin has that story.
We certainly have seen the deterioration of federal hiring standards.
Friday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended Trump's comments, making claims that the FAA's diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring practices are to blame for the deadly midair collision over the Potomac River.
He wants pilots in this country who have the great responsibility of flying American citizens by the tens of millions every single day to be chosen for that position based on their merit and their skills.
This comes just one day after President Trump took aim at DEI, and in the same month, the Trump administration ended DEI practices in the FAA and across the federal government.
How you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash?
Because I have common sense.
Those comments sparking an eruption of pushback Friday, with local Democrats sounding off, calling Trump's statements both hurtful and shameful.
There is not a scintilla of evidence that exists to suggest that women and people of color are to blame for the tragedy that took place. And it was shameful.
New York Attorney General Letitia James released a joint statement alongside 11 other AGs from across the country, also expressing disapproval of the president's statement, writing in part, his baseless and offensive claims that these initiatives somehow contributed to the tragic plane crash this week are an insult to those who are grieving and the individuals serving in the military and air traffic control. And concerns remain for some on the future of a decades-old American practice created to ensure everyone has a seat at the table.
DEI was always about merit. It was just about giving people who were qualified an opportunity to be at the table because they've been denied it because of their race, because of their gender.
Allen Devlin, CBS News, New York.
For more information on the mid-air collision, including questions about the helicopter and more on the figure skaters and the victims, head over to cbsnewyork.com.